Arthur Schopenhauer once said something that will chill you to your core. A person can be himself only so long as he is alone. But what happens when that self is something you should absolutely fear? The 19th century's most brutally honest philosopher spent decades studying the darkest corners of human nature, and what he discovered about certain personality types will fundamentally change how you see everyone around you. Today, I'm revealing Schopenhauer's 6 warning signs of dangerous personalities that you should never, ever trust. These aren't your typical red flags that everyone talks about. These are psychological patterns so subtle, so insidious, that most people fall victim to them without ever realizing what's happening. By the end of this video, you'll have a mental shield that could save your career, your relationships, and quite possibly your life. But here's the terrifying part that nobody wants to admit. You probably know someone right now who fits every single one of these categories. They might be sitting next to you at work. They might be in your family. They might even be someone you consider a close friend. The most dangerous people aren't the obvious villains. They're the ones who've mastered the art of appearing trustworthy while systematically destroying everything they touch. Schopenhauer understood something that modern psychology is only beginning to grasp. Evil doesn't always announce itself with horns and a pitchfork. Sometimes it comes disguised as help, as love, as wisdom, or as victimhood. And once you learn to recognize these masks, you'll never see the world the same way again.
The first type Schopenhauer warned us about is perhaps the most seductive, and therefore the most dangerous. The flatterer doesn't attack you directly. Instead, they weaponize your own ego against you. They're emotional vampires who have mastered the art of ego inflation because they understand something most people never figure out. Your vanity isn't just a weakness. It's your Achilles heel, and they know exactly where to strike. Schopenhauer once wrote that all truth passes through 3 stages. First, it's ridiculed. Then it's violently opposed, and finally, it's accepted as self-evident. But flatterers skip all 3 stages entirely. They go straight to telling you exactly what you want to hear, regardless of whether it's true or not. This isn't accidental. It's a calculated strategy designed to make you psychologically dependent on their validation. Here's how you can spot them. They praise you for things that aren't actually praiseworthy. Their compliments feel slightly exaggerated, like they've been artificially amplified for effect. They agree with you even when you're clearly wrong, and they remember every single achievement you've ever mentioned, no matter how small. Most tellingly, they subtly put down other people while elevating you, creating an artificial hierarchy where you're special and everyone else is somehow inferior. Think about that coworker who constantly tells you how brilliant your ideas are, but somehow their own projects always end up getting the spotlight and recognition. Or consider that friend who praises your relationship while making subtle comments that undermine your partner. They're not supporting you. They're isolating you by making you believe that only they truly appreciate your worth. Schopenhauer had a saying about the cheapest sort of pride being national pride. Because if someone is proud of their nation, it argues that they have no qualities of their own to be proud of. Replace national with personal, and you see the flatterer's game perfectly. They're banking on your pride to blind you to their true intentions. When someone flatters you excessively, always ask yourself this crucial question: what do they want from me? Because trust me, they always want something. The second dangerous type is even more subtle than the first. Controllers are masters of making you think you're free while systematically removing your ability to make independent choices. Schopenhauer observed that the worst tyrants in history were those who made their subjects believe they were living in freedom. Controllers have perfected this psychological manipulation on a personal level. Unlike obvious bullies who use direct force, controllers operate in the shadows of suggestion and emotional manipulation. They don't command you to do something. They guide you toward it. They don't make demands. They create situations where their desired outcome seems like the only logical choice. And somehow, you always end up doing exactly what they wanted while believing it was your own decision. The psychological trap they set is devastatingly effective because they understand that direct force creates resistance. Instead, they create scenarios where their solution appears to be the only rational option. They frame their desires as what's best for everyone involved. They use emotional leverage through guilt, fear, and obligation. They gradually isolate you from other influences and perspectives. They make you question your own judgment until you start relying on theirs. And when confronted about their behavior, they rewrite history to make you seem like the unreasonable one. Consider someone who always volunteers to coordinate group projects or family decisions. They assign roles that conveniently play to people's insecurities while positioning themselves as the indispensable center of everything. When things succeed, they somehow take the credit. When things fail, they blame others while positioning themselves as the one who tried to prevent the disaster. Schopenhauer wrote that a man can do what he wills, but he cannot will what he wills. Controllers exploit this philosophical insight by shaping what you think you want to choose. They don't force your hand. They manipulate the deck until the card you pick is the one they wanted you to choose all along. Before making any decision involving someone you suspect might be a controller, ask yourself this question: would I make this exact same choice if they weren't in the picture? This third type represents perhaps the most psychologically dangerous personality that Schopenhauer identified. These individuals have learned to weaponize sympathy itself, creating a deadly paradox where they simultaneously play the role of victim and aggressor, often within the same conversation. They hurt others and then claim to be the wounded party when there's any pushback or consequences. The victim perpetrator understands something crucial about modern psychology. In our society, victim status grants moral authority. People who are suffering deserve compassion, support, and the benefit of the doubt. This is a beautiful aspect of human nature, but victim perpetrators corrupt it completely. They monopolize victim status, using it as both a shield to protect themselves from accountability and a sword to attack anyone who challenges them. You can recognize them by several key patterns. Their personal stories always cast them as the innocent sufferer in every conflict. They have an endless supply of people who have supposedly wronged them throughout their lives. They never take responsibility for their own role in conflicts or problems. They use their past pain to justify present cruelty toward others, and they collect allies by sharing carefully crafted stories of their victimization that generate sympathy and support. The psychological mechanism they employ is both simple and devastating. They understand that confronting someone who claims to be hurt feels morally wrong to most people, so they create situations where any attempt to hold them accountable can be reframed as additional victimization. They attack or manipulate someone, and when that person responds or resists, they immediately claim victimhood from the response itself. Others rally to support the supposed victim, and suddenly the original target becomes the villain in everyone else's narrative. Schopenhauer believed that compassion is the basis of all morality. Victim perpetrators have learned to corrupt this beautiful human instinct, turning our natural empathy into their personal weapon. They create cycles where they hurt others, claim to be hurt when confronted, gather support from their victim status, and then use that support to hurt people with impunity. Look at patterns rather than individual incidents.
The fourth dangerous type turns intelligence itself into an instrument of domination. Schopenhauer himself occasionally fell into this pattern, which makes his warnings about intellectual bullies particularly credible and insightful. These individuals don't use their intelligence to enlighten or educate. Instead, they've learned to turn knowledge into a psychological club to diminish and control others. Intellectual bullies operate through a superiority complex that manifests in very specific ways. They deliberately overcomplicate simple concepts to make others feel stupid. They use unnecessary jargon and technical language when plain speech would be clearer and more effective. They subtly belittle others' intelligence through condescending explanations and dismissive responses. They consistently steer conversations toward their areas of expertise where they can dominate the discussion. They admit when they're wrong or don't know something, and they credentials or education shut debate down rather than encourage genuine intellectual exchange. The psychological game they is particularly insidious because they exploit a fundamental human fear. Most people are terrified of a stupid or ignorant in front of others. Intellectual create environments where questioning them or offering alternative perspectives feel risky and potentially humiliating. Some afraid to contribute to discussions, share ideas, or challenge their conclusions. In workplace environments, intellectual can be especially destructive. When someone proposes a solution or shares an idea, they respond with unnecessarily complex theoretical frameworks that makes the contributor feel foolish when not considering these advanced concepts. Simply nod and defer rather than admit that they don't understand or for clarification. Schopenhauer that the discovery of truth is prevented more effectively not by false appearance but by preconceived opinions. Intellectual use preconceived notions about intelligence and expertise to prevent others from seeking truth or contributing valuable perspectives. They cultures of intellectual fear where innovation dies and insights are never shared. The protection strategy is simple but effective. When someone gives you an overly complex explanation,
The fifth type that Schopenhauer warned about represents a master class in emotional manipulation. These individuals don't just experience emotions, they perform them strategically, with each tear, each outburst of anger, and each moment of charm calculated for maximum psychological impact on their audience. Schopenhauer believed that emotions often serve as obstacles to clear thinking and rational decision-making. Emotional puppet masters understand this principle intimately and use it as their primary weapon against others. They've learned to turn human emotions into a chessboard where they're always several moves ahead of everyone else. The puppet master's emotional toolkit is vast and sophisticated. They use guilt to control behavior, making statements like, "After everything I've done for you," to shut down resistance. They employ fear to prevent others from leaving or challenging them, with threats about consequences and regret. They weaponize pity to gain sympathy and support, presenting themselves as broken or damaged in ways that make others want to protect them. They use calculated anger to intimidate and silence opposition. And they engage in love bombing, making others feel uniquely special and understood as a way to create psychological dependence. What makes puppet masters so dangerous is that their emotions feel slightly off or performative to anyone paying close attention. They can switch between different emotional states rapidly when it serves their purposes. They use emotional intensity to shut down rational discussion and logical analysis. They remember exactly which emotional appeals work most effectively on different people. They create emotional crises to redirect attention away from their own behavior. And perhaps most tellingly, they never seem genuinely vulnerable, even in supposedly intimate moments. Relationships with emotional puppet masters are exhausting because you spend all your time managing their feelings instead of living your own life. Every interaction becomes about navigating their emotional landscape and avoiding triggers that might set off their next performance. Schopenhauer observed that a person's face usually reveals more interesting and truthful information than their words ever could. When dealing with suspected puppet masters, watch their micro-expressions carefully.
The sixth and perhaps most chilling type that Schopenhauer identified is the chaos creator. These are people who systematically create problems that they then pretend to solve. They're psychological arsonists who set fires and then position themselves as the heroic firefighters who save everyone from the flames they secretly lit. Chaos creators understand a fundamental truth about human psychology. Desperate people make poor decisions when others are overwhelmed, confused, or in crisis, they become much more willing to accept help from anyone who seems to have answers. So chaos creators deliberately engineer desperation in the people around them, then swoop in as the indispensable solution. The pattern is remarkably consistent once you learn to recognize it. Drama and conflict follow them wherever they go, but they always seem to be innocent bystanders rather than participants. They're constantly helping to clean up messes that they secretly created in the first place. They thrive during crisis periods and seem most energetic and engaged when everything is falling apart. They have a talent for escalating small problems into major conflicts. They possess information that seems to come from mysterious sources, and they're always ready with solutions just a little too quickly, as if they've been preparing for exactly these problems. The psychological profile of a chaos creator reveals someone who is addicted to being needed and essential. They literally cannot exist in peaceful environments because peace doesn't require their intervention. They need constant crisis and drama to feel valuable and important. Their methodology follows a predictable three-stage process. First, they create chaos by planting seeds of conflict, spreading rumors, creating misunderstandings between people, or sabotaging systems and processes. Second, they escalate the situation by fanning the flames while appearing genuinely concerned about the growing problems. Third, they position themselves as the hero with the perfect solution, often working overtime or making personal sacrifices to save everyone from the disaster they orchestrated. In workplace environments, chaos creators are particularly destructive. Critical information gets lost right before important deadlines. Key team members suddenly have conflicts with each other. Computer systems mysteriously fail at crucial moments. But there's always one person who works late into the night to save the day, earning praise and recognition for their heroic efforts. In personal relationships, they create drama between mutual friends and then console both sides. They share concerns about your romantic partner that plant seeds of doubt and insecurity. They create situations where they become the stable, reliable point in your increasingly unstable world. Schopenhauer wrote that every person takes the limits of their own field of vision for the limits of the world. Chaos creators deliberately manipulate and limit your field of vision, making their solutions seem like the only possible reality. If someone consistently finds themselves at the center of drama and conflict but never seems to be identified as the actual cause, they probably are the cause. Here's what Schopenhauer understood that most people never figure out. These 6 personality types aren't necessarily separate categories. The most dangerous individuals often combine multiple traits into hybrid threats that are exponentially more destructive than any single type. Consider the flatterer-controller who praises you while systematically manipulating your decisions and isolating you from other influences. Or the victim-perpetrator-chaos creator who creates interpersonal drama, plays the victim when confronted, and then positions themselves as the solution to the very problems they caused. Think about the intellectual bully puppet master who uses both superior knowledge and emotional manipulation to dominate and control every interaction. The universal protection strategies that Schopenhauer would recommend start with trusting your intuitive responses to people. He believed strongly in intuitive knowledge and the wisdom of first impressions. If something feels wrong about someone, it probably is wrong, even if you can't articulate exactly why. Focus on patterns of behavior rather than individual incidents. One problematic interaction could be a mistake or misunderstanding. A consistent pattern of problematic behavior represents a choice and reveals character. Implement a 48-hour rule before making any major decisions involving people you suspect might fall into these categories. Distance and time bring clarity that proximity and pressure often obscure. Document your interactions with potentially dangerous personalities. These types rely heavily on gaslighting and rewriting history to maintain their power. Written records protect your sanity and provide objective evidence when your memory is being challenged. Build and maintain a support network that these individuals cannot control or influence. Dangerous personalities consistently try to isolate their targets from other perspectives and relationships. Set clear boundaries as early as possible in any relationship. The longer you wait to establish limits, the harder it becomes to enforce them. Schopenhauer identified the two primary enemies of human happiness as pain and boredom. Dangerous personalities have learned to exploit both of these vulnerabilities. They create pain to control you, making you desperate for relief. Then they offer that relief in exchange for your compliance and dependence. They also exploit boredom by presenting themselves as exciting, interesting, or dramatic alternatives to the peaceful but ordinary people in your life. Some of you watching this have already recognized people in your lives who fit these descriptions. Maybe multiple people, maybe someone very close to you. This recognition can be uncomfortable and even frightening, but it's also the beginning of your protection and freedom. If you've identified dangerous personalities in your life, don't confront them directly. They're masters of manipulation and will likely turn any confrontation into another opportunity to victimize, control, or manipulate you. Instead, start documenting your interactions with them. Build your independence from them quietly and systematically. Seek professional help if the situation involves abuse or threats. And remember that you're not crazy or oversensitive. You're recognizing patterns that others have missed. Here's a final test that Schopenhauer might appreciate. If you shared this information with someone and they became defensive about being called out or accused, you might have just identified your dangerous personality. Safe, healthy people don't get upset about warnings against manipulative behavior because they're not engaging in manipulative behavior. Schopenhauer's ultimate wisdom was that a person can only be truly themselves when they're alone. Sometimes, being alone is infinitely safer than being with the wrong people. Knowledge is your best protection against those who would use your trust, compassion, and good nature against you. Stay safe, stay aware, and remember that some people should simply never be trusted.